Welcome to The Real Dope, a podcast for anyone walking alongside someone battling addiction, based on the powerful book, The Real Dope on Dealing with an Addict, by sisters Elizabeth Brand and Meridith Elliott Powell. Each episode will explore practical strategies, share authentic stories, and provide the honest guidance. Let's begin today's journey and turn survival into strength.
Hey, this is Meridith Elliott Powell. You know what time it is? It is 11 a.m. Eastern, Thursday morning, one of my favorite times of the week. It is time for The Real Dope, the show where we dive into the strategies, discuss what you need to know if you love, support, or just have to deal with loving an addict. Hanging out here with my sister, Beth Brand. Now, as I always like to remind you, we are not therapists. We are just people that have been through exactly what you are going through, the trials, the tribulations, the highs and the lows of loving an addict. Now, Beth, what do we have on tap for today?
Today, we're going to talk a little bit about what is out there to help you, and basically based on our own experience of the different things that we went to help us grow from this enabling and live a stable life again.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking the other day that it's important to note this is about help for you, the person who loves the addict. This is not a show today about finding help and support for the addict, which is so important because you have got to realize that you need help. You need the support. You need to take care of yourself before you ever think about taking care of an addict. Let's go ahead and start the show and start talking about the support mechanisms that you need. But Beth, I wanted to start off with a question. How do you even get to the point of knowing that you need support and help? I know for me, the thing that was so prevalent was I was so afraid to let other people know. I remember the first time I went to Al-Anon and I saw a friend from the community in Al-Anon. Now, the beauty of Al-Anon is that it's all about confidentiality, but still I was embarrassed because there was somebody else in the community that now knew my deep, dark secret.
Well, first of all, I never did get to that place. But what got me to Al-Anon and to getting help was I just couldn't hold it together anymore. Everything was falling apart, and I had a little baby that needed protection. So I had to both protect my child, and I kinda did it because I thought if I could just get through this and pull everything together, then everyone would be alright. So even if you just feel like that, you're not like, "Oh, I need to fix myself," like, you can't even get there because you're such an enabler like me. It's the best thing that you can do for the person who is suffering with the addiction, is get help for yourself. You'll learn to walk so that they can walk behind you. If that's the only motivation you can put together, and at first, that's the only motivation I could put together. If I could be healthier, then maybe the whole household could be healthier.
Yeah, and I think that the moment that, I just think even taking the time to breathe in the morning. I mean, whether you're talking about loving an addict or not, taking the time to breathe in the morning and really asking yourself, are you happy? Are you joyful? Like, is this the life you want to live? And if it isn't, if there's any part of it, then you don't have to commit to help. You don't have to say, I'm going to, completely immerse myself. It's just maybe I should ask for some help and some support. So I think that's I feel like sometimes we treat help like something we have to immerse ourselves in 150% rather than just take a step with it.
Well, I don't know about you, but my life was, like, way out of control. I mean, at least you had a good job and some money. I mean, I was just trying to fake it with a baby on the hip and trying to go to business meetings and trying to keep my business afloat and stuff, and so I knew I couldn't do any more for Edward, but I had to do something. Again, I couldn't I didn't care if I was happy or not. I just
Mhm.
needed to keep things afloat. And so that's when I started reaching out, like, Al-Anon was the first place I reached out to. One of the reasons is because it was free. But like you said, it's also, um I was in a really small town in Tennessee, so you do see people, and even when I moved to North Carolina, I still still people you know, it's people in your neighborhood. I know a lot of people choose to go to Al-Anon meetings that are out of town when they live in a small town, and that's an option too.
Yeah, something I heard that was interesting the other day was I had a friend who's in the military and was struggling with a military spouse. And you have to be very careful about getting help and support because it can go on the record, of your significant other. So let's start talking about the places to go for help. I mean, that Al-Anon was the very first place that I went. Now I need to tell you, the very first Al-Anon I went to was not the right Al-Anon for me.
Me too, same thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was like, looking back now, I don't know if it was me or the meeting, because I wasn't ready to hear everything they had to say. So my advice would be, first to first of all, a lot of people, like, people who have helped to sell a lot tell you that Al-Anon's, like, not any good, like, that's old fashioned, and, you don't have to be powerless and da 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 da. I think I look at Al-Anon like when nobody else in the whole world would reach out to a family with this issue, Al-Anon has been there. It has been there through thick and thin, and frankly, they know exactly what I wish they taught Al-Anon in 8th grade, because it teaches personal responsibility. It teaches you to start taking a look at yourself and figuring out what you can change and what you can't change.
Yeah.
And even if you don't have any addiction in your life, it's a great thing.
Yeah, and I do think that the very first meeting, I think it was me. I don't think it was the
Yeah,
meeting.
I look back on that now too, even though I was in a place where the people, where their experiences were a lot different than mine. I do think if I went back now, even their different experiences would resonate with them, but at the time, I couldn't relate.
Yeah, I couldn't either. I also felt like I was still in such a resistant
Mhm,
mode, which I think is really good when you think about going for help and support is that I was still fighting. I was like, one of their big things was you have to be so at peace. You have to really understand that you are powerless. This is your responsibility. Let's work on fixing you, that you should actively be able to live with an addict. And
mhm,
it shouldn't, and I just couldn't swallow that. And so, because I didn't agree with one thing, I
right.
discounted everything else they told me.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's really important, especially at first. It's like, when you're 20 years old, you don't understand, sound kinda dumb to somebody who's 50, because you
Mhm.
don't understand everything yet, and that's the way it is at Al-Anon. Like, take what fits you, and just leave the rest until someday you understand it, or maybe you never understand it. Maybe it never works for you, but it doesn't matter. The point of just being in there, giving yourself that time to reflect on you and where you are, and with other people who understand your problems, is, like, just good. But definitely shop around for meetings, because when I was more ready when I found the meeting I really liked, but also, it was, like, kinda more intellectual, so it could talk to my head more, which is where I was most of the time, way in my head. And, like, what they did was it wasn't just like everyone talked, they had a theme for the night, and they passed it around and people spoke on it. So it was more me
Yeah.
than the other one that I had gone to. So, but I probably went to 2 or 3 different meetings.
Yeah, I did too, and the one that I ultimately found was I had made the decision that I didn't want to actively live with an addict anymore, and one thing Al-Anon tells you, it isn't a right or wrong, you can do whatever you wanted
Mhm.
to, and I found a meeting where people had moved on in their
Mm,
lives, they didn't want addiction in
yeah.
actively in their lives, and that was a better fit for me because the very
Mhm,
first one I went to was led by 3 women who had been in addictive relationships for more than 20 years, and, they'd found a way to live with that. It wasn't the life I wanted, so I had
right.
to find a better fit. But I think that's so important is like when you feel resistance, like check yourself and think,
Mhm,
okay, that's your judgment and that's your it's almost like I think so often I could look at the things that I was not willing to change, and I could look at them through the lens of what my addictive husband was going through too, because it was so hard for me to accept this. No wonder he would be feeling the same level of resistance in
mhm.
his ability to find help.
Yeah. Another thing that you did that I didn't do was you went to some, open AA meetings.
Yeah, I call them open mic night, but I would really suggest this. I don't know what it's like in your town, but I really can't suggest this. This was probably one of the most powerful things that I did for my own education. But every Wednesday night in Hendersonville, North Carolina, there was an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting that had an open night. Anybody could come, whether you were an addict or not. And I probably went to 9 or 10 of them. And the reason it was so helpful is because it really opened my eyes to how massive a problem this was for the person struggling with addiction, how much they didn't want to be addicted, and that if I was going to get on this journey, that I could never expect the addict to heal. Like the average number of times that the addict went through rehab was 12.
Yeah.
um, every single story was exactly the same, whether people were Ivy League educated, whether they dropped out of school in the 6th grade, whether they made millions of dollars, or whether they made 30 grand a year. It was I felt I was uncomfortable in social situations. Alcohol took the edge off. I became more confident. I became more fun. I became this. And all of a sudden, I tipped over an edge and I couldn't stop. And pretty much everybody who spoke had lost absolutely everything. The people they loved, they'd lost all their money, they'd lost their houses, they'd lost all their relationships, and ultimately they'd lost their health, all due to alcohol and or drugs. And it was just, I don't know, there was just something really helpful about understanding the
And
story.
nobody chooses that.
Nobody chooses.
Nobody chooses that, and that's why, I just think it's a disease, I just do. It's like, you don't wake up in the morning and go, "I think I'll just ruin everything," especially, like, your relationship with your children and everything else. That's like
Yeah, yeah, and it was, but it would so I would really, if your town has that, under seeking first to understand,
Mhm,
as the old adage goes, was very it helped me learn to be firm on boundaries, at the same time having compassion.
mhm.
Yeah.
And also, I think it would show you, like, the progression and the way addiction progresses in a person, and that you're, like, making these exceptions and paying parking tickets and, doesn't help. You're not helping.
Yeah.
You're just feeding the addiction so that it's gonna get worse. You're not
Yeah.
making anything better.
It was so helpful to hear addicts say, and I think anybody who has children should hear this right now, whether your children have problems or not. Like the addicts would say over and over again from the mic, please stop helping us. If somebody just wouldn't have interfered, I would have hit bottom and changed my life a lot sooner. And they weren't blaming anybody, but they were saying that the reason those relationships were ruined was partly because of their addiction, but the other partly is because they burned that bridge because they were not ready to get help when everybody else was interfering. And to hear that out of an addict's mouth
Mhm,
was really, really helpful.
mhm, mhm. So, it's interesting too with Al-Anon, as in Al-Anon, you take the same 12 steps that they take in AA to get yourself
Yeah.
healed. And, I just found the whole thing really helpful, and I think other people do, but my suggestions for that would be to shop around for a meeting, and if something sounds dumb at first or like, "No way," or "That's not my experience," just sit with it. Like,
Yeah.
don't argue with it, don't say, "This isn't for me, I hate this." Just sit with it,
Mhm.
and, yeah. So, then, both you and I moved on in some separate times and separate ways to a psychologist, a therapist. So, what was your experience there, and what do you recommend for people?
I think you've gotta find a therapist that works for you. I think it's very, very good to have a therapist, but I think this is such an interesting idea because you and I moved on to very different type of therapists. Like,
Mhm,
I went into therapy, and the very first thing I said is she said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "My brother died. My brother-in-law died." My brother I think Larry died in January, like, I forget when Edward passed away, and then Doug had died in March, and I said, "I think I should feel something, and I don't."
Mm.
And, I said, "But I don't wanna talk about why this is my parents' fault. I don't wanna talk about why this is my addict's fault. I just wanna figure out what I did to get myself here, and I don't ever wanna be in this position again." My point is, I was looking for a therapist who was a bit of a hard ass who would hold me accountable. I
Mhm.
don't think you really wanted or needed that approach.
No, no.
Yeah. So I think you've gotta find
Everything was already my fault.
yeah. So I think you've
I
gotta
control the world, and everyone who's addicted, it's my fault.
So I think you've gotta I think moving on and finding a therapist the other thing I would suggest with therapy would be that you move in and out of it, like you start
Mhm.
and stop it, because it's really, really easy to work on yourself in a room with somebody where you have the time, energy, and no pressure to try to act on those things. But going to therapy for a few months and then going, "Okay, I've got these tools," and then trying to live that in the real world,
Mhm.
that's where the work's done.
Yeah, I went back and forth like you did too, and yeah, I definitely needed a gentler therapist.
Mhm.
I definitely needed yeah, did not need a hard ass. I didn't need to be yelled at. I needed or not yelled at, but just I needed somebody who was gonna be more gently in, so it was like a different person, but you also need somebody I mean, I would highly recommend it somebody there who's been there,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
who has either ha who has loved somebody who has addiction, because those are the only people that understand. I remember the first time I went to, like, a therapist, but not really, Edward had been in recovery, and this was at the University of Tennessee, and, their program was great, their aftercare it didn't really work for either Edward or me, and the therapist was very young. She, like, just gotten outta and she had no, experience with addiction other than clinical experience through her training, I believe, and she was just telling families it didn't make any sense, because how could it? How could it? She didn't know. You
Right.
know, she knew what she learned in books or what she learned in the hospital, but she didn't know what it was like to live it every day or where we were coming from or what our feelings and fears were.
Yeah, that's such good advice because my very first therapist had been an addict, and that was nice, but I needed somebody who understood my side. She ended up not really being the right fit for me.
And my second therapist, and I really went to her because she helped with Cabell too, because she specialized in family, and by this point, I understood that this was a family disease, and you know, it was all of us. And so my son was in it as well as me, and I went to her because she had had enough things happen in her own life, traumatic things that she still got it. I don't know that addiction was exactly her thing, but she'd still had lived through traumatizing relationships within family. So, she worked for me at that point. But you have to get someone who understands, I guess, is our other thing.
Yeah.
And I would also beware of anyone who was trying to give you drugs,
Yeah.
because I know that a lot of physicians and a lot of therapists will send you a psychiatrist and they'll give you, like, Xanax or, an antidepressant. And if you need it, you need it. I mean, I'm not gonna judge it, I'm not a doctor, I have no idea, but don't for 1 sec I mean, to me, w where I would fear that personally is it's numbing.
Yeah, and you don't need to be numbed.
Don't need to be numb. You need you're not your enabling has been numbing you. You need to feel everything, and it hurts, and it's hard, and you got yourself here, and you have to get yourself out for, you know, for the sake of your whole family, but, yeah, I mean, I think if you're so depressed and whatever, and that's the best choice for you, okay, I just, like, beware of it.
Yeah, I think that too. It's one of the reasons that when we used to go to Al-Anon, you'd see a lot of former addicts end up in Al-Anon because well, and the other way around, Al-Anon members and enablers become addicts because the pain is so great, you look for things to you look for things to numb,
Mhm.
yourself, so I think
Well, I
that's
think our own father
yeah,
became an alcoholic because his father was an alcoholic. I think he was like, "If you can't beat him, join him."
yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
which happens a lot.
Yeah,
Happens a lot,
yeah,
you
yep,
know? So
yeah,
you have to watch yourself, and I just to me, with the antidepressants and the Xanax type medications, like, I just think it slows your growth, and if you need it and you feel like it's helping, like, whatever your doctor says, I don't know, but just, like, give yourself a second question about that before you do it.
Yeah, so important.
Mm.
It's hard to believe, but it's about time to wrap up this show, I know. So we probably need to talk a little bit more on this subject. Then I had an idea that I think would go really, really well with this subject is I wanted to talk about educating yourself on the disease. Like, I
Okay.
really think you need to really understand addiction, the signs of what to look for, how the disease works, because all of these things, like I just remember a therapist telling me, you need to realize he's not in there anymore. He's
Yes,
gone.
it's
A
really hard.
and I didn't know those things.
Mm.
So, what's your big takeaway from today?
Well, my big takeaway from today is, this journey to get your self-help is yours. Nobody can tell you how to do it. We were just here sharing our experience in both these 2 things. We didn't get to covering, like, friends and family, but you need to be careful there. You want people around you who support you, not people who are gonna put you down when you change, and you're gonna experience people putting you down when you change. So, it's not gonna look like anyone else's. Like, maybe like, Meredith had one kind of therapist, I had another.
Yeah.
I went to Al-Anon early, and then I didn't care if the whole world knew. Meredith did. It's just different all the
Yeah.
time. So this is your journey. You decide what helps. Just be careful out there.
Yeah. I would say my big takeaway from today is that the moment that you feel unhappiness in your life, it doesn't have to be extreme. That's when it's time to seek some help. That's when it's time to go and find help. That's like you don't have to go all in. You don't have to commit 100%. Just try it one time. And if it doesn't work for you, give it a little bit and go back again. And to understand that the best way to help your addict is to focus on helping yourself.
Hey, Mayor, they have online Al-Anon now.
Oh, do they?
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
yeah.
Wow, talk about
You would love that. Oh,
being
yeah.
able to be confidential. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So we'll see you right back here next week for another episode of The Real Dope, 11 a.m. Eastern, every Thursday morning. Please know that if you have questions or us to cover a topic, please don't hesitate to reach out. And when we come back next week, we'll be talking about education and the things that you need to understand about addiction, the signs to look for, and what actually the disease is doing. Also, we're going to talk about we're going to finish this conversation as some more tools that you can have to support you on this journey of loving, dealing with, and having to love an addict. All right. We'll see you right back here next week.
Bye.
Bye.